Good evening, good evening. Third time, good evening. My name is Jonathan Shanks, and I will be discussing chapter 5 of Larry Hurtado's book, Destroyer of Gods, an early Christian distinctiveness in a Roman world. Again, I will be discussing chapter 5 of Larry Hurtado's book, Destroyer of the Gods, an Christian distinctive um, an early Christian distinctiveness in a Roman world. Um, the reason I chose chapter 5, why chapter 5? The reason I chose chapter 5 out of a book that I think was well researched and full of information and most definitely interesting from cover to cover. But I chose chapter 5 because, in my opinion, I think chapter 5 was not only the more insightful, but it was the most interesting chapter in this 5 chapter book. Um, I think it is the most interesting of the chapters because this is what Heritado has been building toward. This is what chapters 1 through 4 has been leading to. This is the finale. This is the ultimate component of Christian distinctiveness. What makes Christianity different? What makes the Christian different? How what separates Christianity from all the other religions and religious movements at that time. Again, the ultimate distinctiveness of Christianity, and that is Christian behavior. Uh, chapter 5, chapter 5, um, chapter 5 consists of 11 subsections. It consists of 11 subsections. Which has a variety of topics, highlighting some of the immoral behaviors during the Roman era or during these times. It is in this chapter that Hurtado shifts from Christianity as a distinctive religion, as a distinct religious identity, to a distinctive nature to the distinctive nature of their practice. Hurtado notes in this final chapter that Christianity was not just different in form and in worship and in doctrinal belief, but if Christianity was going to reshape a dark and sometimes inhumane society, which throughout this chapter it is clearly seen some of the inhumane behavior they was a part of. But if Christianity was to overcome and reshape a dark and sometimes an inhumane culture, the people themselves, which would be difficult because most of these were former pagan who come out of this culture, who saw this as normal behavior. But if Christianity was going to reshape this culture, the people themselves were going to have to be different. And I like the way the author starts this off. He begins by highlighting some of the negative aspects of their action. And the first thing he highlights is infant exposure. Uh, this is the practice of people literally throwing their infant children in the trash. Classic case of abandonment. They were leaving infants on trash heaps and leaving them there to die, and which most of them did. But those who survived, let's just say their life was not off to the best start, because those who rescued them sometimes did not do it for the best interest or the best welfare of the child, but they did it for their own goods as they mold and prepare these children for a life of slavery. So they didn't have the best start. Hurtado also talked about the gladiator arena. Talked about he pretty much highlighted the violent nature of these times and how it was celebrated. And then he goes on to deal with the immoral sexual behavior of these people. They had some really bad moral behaviors. A lot of the stuff is stuff we see today. But what's so bad about this is this stuff was tolerated and on some occasions celebrated. For instance, the sexual abuse with children, this was tolerated. Young children, young adolescents, in particularly young boys were molested, and this was tolerated rated in those days, and in some cases even cheered. But Paul in great length talks about the relationship between the husband and the wife, and what I found fascinating about that is how he highlights the double standards of those times where the woman was, forbidding to have sexual relation with any man. She was expected to be the wife of one husband, while the man was, it was tolerated that even, even celebrated and cheered that he would practice having sex with multiple partners. It was okay as long as this woman was someone of a lower class, such as prostitutes or slaves. Men men could get away with it. But we also see that these men took advantage of this. They a lot of them did sleep with their slaves, and Herodotus knows particularly slave boys. Again, we see we see this molestation. We see, the sexual molestation that was going on during this time period. But I think though one of the strengths of this chapter was the section on a religion with behavior demands. This is where our author he argues for Christianity as being a teaching religion. In other words, it was not just about altars and shrines and priests and religious practices, but the doctrines, the documentations, the book was about teaching them to live different, new lives, as the title as is entitled, a new way to live. In chapter 4, Herodotus noted that the letters of Paul at the time had been accepted as had been accepted as the authority of the Scripture, and most of the letters that were circulating during this time were written by Paul, and most of Paul's letters we all know, as the author even notes that they were written for teaching and exaltation purposes. In other words, this is an excellent. This is an excellent point by Herodotus. This is an insightful observation, because a lot of Paul's letters to the churches was to address some type of behavioral issue, which he highlights again by posting 1 Corinthians chapter 7, addressing some of their sexual practices. He also deals with the household code a little bit, and he talked about the difference between it and the household code, and the difference between it and the household management advice, which was basically a set of advice, some advice for the pagan of that time. One, the household code governed the behavior and exhorted all the parties involved, while household management, again, which is a bunch of pagan advice. I truly enjoyed chapter 5. I truly enjoyed this entire book. I would recommend it for others to read. Thank you.